Welcome, everyone, to our series Religare Music, the fourth installment of Religare Music. I am Stuart Nelson, the Vice President at the Institute for Spirituality and Health. And at the outset, before anything else, I'd like to introduce our ASL interpreter, Alan Farnham, from Nightingale Interpretive Services. Thank you so much, Alan, for being here. At the Institute, our mission is to enhance well-being by exploring the relationship between spirituality and health. I am joined this evening by Carlene Graham, Director of HGOco, Houston Grand Opera's Community and Learning Initiative. Hey, Carlene.
Hey, Stuart. I'm so excited to see you again this is episode 4. Can you even believe it?
It's episode 4.
I am just so excited.
If you're joining us for the first time, I wanted to give you a little background on the series. Religare Music is part of a wider series at ISH that explores some of the essential building blocks of cultural and religious traditions. Religare, or to bind fast or to bind again in Latin, is considered by some scholars to be the root for religion. So Religare Music delves into the rich musical traditions that have inspired and communicated some of the most profound aspects of the human experience across millennia. And through these components, we hope you see connections between these amazing traditions as well as music and its power to bind people together. Today, we're focused on the element of lyrics.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, if you haven't been with us before, we are looking at each week we're looking at a different element of music, or the different kinds of things that contribute to making musical art form. And so we began with rhythm, moved on to melody, harmony. Tonight we are at words and lyrics, and our last episode next week will be on silence, because silence is an important part of sound. And so you might want to ask, why would an opera company like Houston Grand Opera be partnering with the Institute for Spirituality and Health? And I have to say that we've enjoyed a wonderful partnership with the Institute for Spirituality and Health and Stuart and his team. And this all came about because Houston Grand Opera is in the middle of a 6-year initiative called Seeking the Human Spirit. And this is a multidisciplinary initiative that is designed to highlight the universal spiritual themes raised in opera and to expand and deepen everyone's connections to opera and art. And through the components that we are exploring, rhythm, melody, harmony, lyrics, and eventually silence, you may see connections between cultures and spiritual traditions where none were present for you before.
So today, to begin, Professor Tony Pinn and Bun B will be sharing some context on lyrics and spirituality. Carlene, I'll see you a little later in the program. I first met Dr. Pinn and Bun B when I was taking their class on hip hop and religion at Rice University, and I'm just so happy that they're going to be here to join us today. Welcome, Dr. Pinn, and there he is. Welcome, Bun B. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's quite a nice opportunity to continue the conversation we had in that classroom on campus.
Yeah, maybe 12 years ago now.
No need to tell. No need to tell.
my gray hairs tell enough about my age. Don't help to it.
Well, I'll leave it to y'all, but I'll look forward to connecting with you a little bit later in the program.
Well, Stuart, you know what other folks listening may not know, that one of the things we tried to do in the classroom was get folks to expand and rethink the vocabulary they use to capture what we typically mean by religion and spirituality. And so in light of that, it's safe to say that one might consider spirituality the effort to name the unnameable. That is to say, it's the effort on the part of individuals to wrestle with the deep entanglements that shape and define life. Now, within the context of African American communities, much of this has taken place through the arts. Think in terms of music. And this makes a lot of sense when you think in terms of a population that for better than 200 years was denied systematic access to the written word. Didn't mean we didn't think deep thoughts and communicate it. We did this through music. And one of these forms of musical expression that does this so well is hip hop. It provides a way of wrestling with these issues. And here's where a lot of folks get caught, that it forces us to rethink what we understand as proper theological language for these deep issues. And it does it in a way that often introduces and signifies terminology that troubles us. For a good number of years now, I've had a wonderful opportunity to have this sort of conversation with Bun B. And so what we're going to do tonight is try to boil that down to 4 questions. And we'll get through all these questions if we can. If not, we'll do what we can with the questions we're able to get through. So Prof, first,
yes,
hip hop wasn't always defined by lyrics as the dominant element. This develops over time. And I'm curious, why do you think the lyrical content of hip hop begins to loom so large? And what is it that the lyrics provide that the music, the dance, the aesthetic could not?
Well, first of all, I'm so happy to be here with you, Doc. It's always a pleasure having these conversations with you, particularly about the class. In terms of the MC and lyricism, right? So the MC was a bit of a back player, right? He was really the backup guy and the supporter to the DJ. Right. So the DJ in hip hop controlled the music, controlled the party, and the MC initially was just a supporter of the DJ. So the DJ would play the music and the MC was really more about, hey, if you guys are having a good time, put your hands up. If you like the music, hey, where y'all from? Where you from? Trying to keep people engaged in the moment. Right. At some point, the MC realizes that the man with the microphone is in position to control more. And so these shout outs went from just being very random to being pre-written sometimes, right? They evolved into lyrical compliments to the music. And instead of being a side player or a backup singer, so to speak, to the DJ, the MC becomes the communication point of what the music and the party and the vibe in the room is supposed to represent. As the MC gets better and better in tune with the audience that they're speaking to, and the platforms that are afforded to them to speak to the audience start to grow, so does the wordplay, right? The presentation and the messages starts to change from the MC. And so what we start off with as just very random thoughts, come to more deep thoughts, right? And to talk to people about the conditions in which everyone in these spaces tend to share, right? So if we're all from the Bronx and we're at a party in the Bronx, if I'm going to get on the mic and rap about stuff, I'm going to rap about what we see in the Bronx, right? Broken glass everywhere. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. And so the MC starts to realize the power of the pulpit is what happens, right? And so from that point on, the MC realizes, hey, this could be as superficial as I want it to be, or it could be as poignant as I want it to be. Certain people have certain interests. Certain people have better sensitivities towards manipulation of the English language than others and are more adept to incorporating a high level of lyricism into their music. Some tend to stay within the parameters of the party crowd and not stir any feathers or step on any toes.
That is fantastic. And you raised a point that I'd like to stick with for a moment. It seems to me you are absolutely right. There are ways in which the lyrics, the MC within hip hop culture plays a very similar role to the preacher within the church, for example, that they provide in a way that is creative and imaginative opportunities to engage and interrogate deep religious and spiritual questions and truths. Now, I was a UGK fan long before I got to Houston, and two of my jams, right? Yes. And I mention these because I think there are ways in which they unexpectedly probe deep religious and spiritual questions and yearnings and truth. One day and game belonged to me. But I'm wondering, just kind of thinking about hip hop more broadly, thinking about the lyrics more broadly, are there other examples you'd highlight for folks that kind of tap into the lyrics' relationship to these kinds of spiritual questions?
Yes, absolutely. There are plenty of examples, right? And we can start at things that are very surface level, right? Pray by MC Hammer, right? Very implicit in its message, right? Not complicated by deep levels of lyricism or deep thought, right? Just the basic connotation and notes and practices of those who are believers in Christianity, right? We believe in God, and we believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, we're going to always give praise. And that's why we pray. That's why we pray every day, right? These are basic tenets in Christianity, right? Not very deep thoughts, right? And then you get to people like a Kanye West in terms of a Jesus Walks, right? Where the conversation and the balance is a little bit more shaky, right? There are different choices that we're making in the midst of life that kind of complicate us following this very strict path in Christianity, right? So even though I do believe in the idea of Jesus Christ as my Savior and as God as the creator and maker of all things, my walk is a little bit, I'm not necessarily on the right path right now. It kind of teeters back and forth, right? Now, I do want to go to heaven. I do want to give all the praise, but I am fighting against flesh and I am dealing with temptation, right? These different things that those in the physical world deal with in the course of trying to find their way to the spiritual world, heaven, so to speak. Right. And then, once we get into people like Chance the Rapper, who can do both, right? Talk about the complication in the relationship, but still be very steadfast in his belief system and his faith. Right. And so he can not only celebrate his faith, but then also acknowledge the complications that arise in being a human being. Right. So, I mean, we have many, many examples. Right. But I think today, because there's a certain songs that you tend to like, Doc, we'll stay in the UGK library for those two.
I appreciate you.
No problem.
Folks over the past few years have come to recognize something, Bun, that we have known for a long time, that in large part, the wrestlings within the United States for Black folks have revolved around a fundamental effort to be recognized as human, right? Cornel West argues that the idea that Black people are human is a relatively recent idea in the modern West, right? So much of this religiosity, so much of this spirituality is getting at a sense of personhood, a sense of humanity. So I want to kind of pull in another of our brothers from Houston and think along these lines. It seems to me that so much within hip hop kind of revolves around developing a grammar and vocabulary for exploring these issues of humanity and personhood in a way that aren't simply captured by what you possess, what you drive, what you wear, but are much more mental and psychological. So, I sit alone in my four-corner room staring at candles, right? So it seems to me there are ways in which this gets played out. I'm wondering if you could just say a bit more concerning how issues of identity and personhood get played out lyrically.
Well, this is all about reclamation, right? This is about Black people reclaiming their identity, their physicality, being able to not only be acknowledged as a human being, but speak to their humanity, right? And so hip hop allows that, right? It allows that space for people to be able to feel safe speaking about some things that could be considered extremely vulnerable and very personal to them, right? But the chances that people take and the way that it's approached is absolutely necessary, right? Because they understand that the platform that they're using not only allows them to be able to reclaim themselves, but creates a safe space and where all like-minded people can all be a part of this reclamation, right? And so for me as a writer, right, I not only get to speak about maybe my own personal struggles, right, different circumstances that have been thrown at me that I've had to overcome, right? And unfortunately, many of the people that come from the community in which I represent have had those same struggles, right? And so by being able to share that and speak my truth, which is also in many instances their truth, right? We find ourselves in a community and in communion with each other over these shared experiences, right? And so now, because I have found it necessary for me to reclaim my identity and speak it, to the heavens, so do those that feel like me. And they're empowered now to speak their truth about their identities, because they now have an example of someone willing to stand not only with them, but for them.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit in terms of UGK and the Ghetto Boys. We could spend 15 days, let alone 15 minutes on just hip hop. But it seems to me on Houston hip hop, but it seems to me, if you think about this culture, it is robust. It is life transforming. It provides a way of wrestling with meaning. So if you think in terms of Queen Latifah, thinking in terms of moral and ethical sensibilities and codes, a sense of unity. If you think in terms of KRS-One and the idea that hip hop culture really serves as a kind of religious reality for many, or if you think in terms of Jay-Z and Kanye West, right? No church in the wild.
Right.
We formed a new religion, no sin as long as there's permission. I'm wondering if we might end our time in this conversation kind of going back to the question we typically ended the course with. Are there ways in which hip hop culture really serves as a new religion or a new form of spirituality?
Absolutely, right? Because when we speak in terms of religion and spirituality, right? It's about the practices that we participate in and the way that we look at and approach life and deal with the things that we don't necessarily understand about life, right? These very hard questions, or as we would talk about it, the quest for, spiritual, God, I've drawn a blank here, Doc. But you understand what I mean, right?
Yeah, complex subjectivity.
This is complex subjectivity, yes, right? So hip hop affords people something in certain instances that religion and spirituality does not, right? So the practices of religion, right? And even the organizations themselves, for many people, they don't connect, right? You can be born into a Catholic home, right? Go to catechism, right? Go to mass and go to all these different things, right? But the acts that you participate within Catholicism, as well as the religion itself, doesn't really help you come to terms with things because there's imperfections within it. We see a lot of different scandals, sexual abuse, right? So there's complications in accepting the word of the priest sometimes, right? We see this in Christianity as well. A lot of times there are issues arise with certain prosperity preachers, right? Where the funds that they raise in their church are misused. And so people tend to have a problem, not necessarily with the message, but with the messenger, right? And so what hip hop does, by connecting with people by experience, by location, right? And the way that we look at the world, certain things that we embrace, have a certain trust factor that exists between themselves and hip hop as a culture and an art form that doesn't exist for them in terms of religion, right? Like organized religion that we all recognize, right? And so hip hop allows and affords certain people the ability to be a better person, to contribute to their society, to care for their fellow man, right? All of the different characteristics that we would consider proper in humanity, right? And if hip hop is what it takes for certain people, let's do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Prof, you are my friend and my colleague. I could talk to you all day, but it's time for me to shut up, step aside so you can do your thing.
Yes. So we definitely wanted to draw from the song One Day. And when we do these lyrics, I made a conscious decision to do them a cappella and spoken as opposed to with the music. One, because we're concentrating on lyrics, right? We're not concentrating on songs. We're concentrating on lyrics. But then I also wanted people to really understand every word that's spoken. I didn't want people to get caught up in the groove or anything like that. So I wanted to give the words as much poignancy as possible. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to recite from The artist known as 3-2, Christopher Berrier, rest in peace. He passed away recently. A good friend of mine. And actually, this song, One Day, was his original idea. We were able to join him on it. And the verse goes as such. And I want to keep in mind that some of this language that I'm about to use may be considered offensive by some. So if you're not used to coarse language, typically associated with some of the rougher hip hop music out there, I just want to give everyone a chance, an opportunity to either mute or step away for a second. If there are children in the room, they might not want to be in the room for this. So this is 3-2's verse from the song One Day by UGK. Mama put me out at only 14. So I start selling crack, cocaine, and codeine. Time to stack some paper. I got to do it quick. Thinking I'm a juvenile, but they don't know who they messing with. Yeah, my mama's only son. But I live every day like it's my motherfucking last one. Every nigga and their mama asking why. But I'm in the game, live by the game, and in the game I'ma die. And if I die, should I say if and go? Bury me in Harlem Clark next to the come and go. Because tomorrow won't be promised to me. The only thing promised to a player is the penitentiary. So I'm going to take care of my business on the smooth tip. Watch my back selling crack and pack 2 clips. Because when you think about that, you say it'll be on. It's a trip you're here today, but the next day you're gone. I will now pull from my own verse from this song as well. This world we living in, man, it ain't nothing but drama. Everyone want to harm you. In New York, niggas getting shot for bombers. Now they got your life in the palm of their hand like California. Niggas with dubs of hydroponic. Marijuana, gangbanging, got the ghetto hotter than a sauna. Down in Orange, my nigga Box died on the corner behind a funky-ass dice game. I saw him once before we died. Wish it was twice, man. I remember being A-Deep off at Chucky's crib, letting us act bad, not giving a fuck what we did. When we lost him, I knew the world was coming to the end, and I had to quit letting that devil push me to a sin. My brother being in the pen for damn near 10, but now it looks like when he comes out, man, I'm going in. So shit, I walk around with my mind blown in my own fucking zone, because one day you here, the next day you're gone. All right, I will also, because I know we're getting a little bit short on time, I'm going to go into this next song, and this song is called Heaven. And this song is very personal to me because this is the last song that I recorded with my partner and brother, the late, great Pimp C. And it was a contemplative song, right, about what happens when you're no longer together, right, when we no longer share this physical space on this earth and move into the spiritual, right? And who gets to share that spiritual space and who doesn't, and for what reasons? And so I will now recite Pimp C's verse from the song Heaven by UGK. I wonder if it's a heaven for all the drug dealers, for all the hot boys, strippers, and the thug niggas. Even my wife, because she was selling niggas drink too. She ain't bad, she was just doing what the paper do. I wonder if they got a spot for all the Tupacs, dogs and pins, and all the boys with the weed spots. I keep a pistol on me because these niggas got him too. Run up on me wrong and I'm going to do what I got to do. If love and screw is wrong, I don't want to be right. Sipping oil and smoking light bright. The preacher talking about us in the pulpit. Behind closed doors, he be on some gay shit. I'm out here in the streets. This ain't no place to play, bitch. You show some weakness, come up short or catch a case, bitch. I want to change, but this ain't the wrong time. I want to stop, but these niggas just ordered 9. I now recite my verse from the song Heaven by UGK. Late at night, when I'm laying off in my bed counting bread, some crazy shit be going through my head. I be wondering about this life that I live, and if God got some better shit he could give. I wonder if it's a better place for the innocent kids in the ghetto that gotta suffer for shit that they ain't did by no fault of their own, going through struggles and strife, having to deal with a fucked up life. I know they thinking nobody knows or nobody cares. Why can't nobody see this shit when everybody stares? Man, we losing the children. We're losing the youth because you motherfuckers won't tell them the truth. So they running around unprepared and uninformed. It's understood why the hood is under arms. We got to show them it's a better way at any cost because they're the future. If we don't save them, we're already lost. Forgive me for messing up the words. And these are 2 songs from my own personal moments of reflection and contemplating choices that I made, as well as choices that people that I know that listen to me and follow me contemplate at night as well. And it's often not things that are talked about in mixed company. It's usually something that people deal with on their own. And so I wanted to let people know that they weren't alone in their thoughts about, reflecting on what happens after this life, what the future holds for them, and just try to make sense of it all. These are very complicated questions that people have to ask themselves, and not everyone has levels of clarity that will inform them of what it is they're really pondering. And so knowing that I have a platform and knowing that I struggle with these issues as well, I let my platform, be a service to people who contemplate what I contemplate, and to know that they're not alone in the struggle to make sense of it all.
Thanks, Bun. That was fantastic. We hope this provided some food for thought, gave you things that you'll wrestle with for days to come. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening.
Great.
Yes, thank you so much, man. This is amazing to be a part of it. I'm, so happy to see what you've grown into and progressed into. And, now we stand before you, having stood, as a student and you the teacher. So I love it.
Well, thanks. It's always a back and forth, and I just so appreciate y'all being here. We'll connect with you hopefully a little bit later at the end of the program after we hear from our next two speakers and artists. I have so many thoughts, and there's so much richness in everything you shared, and I just truly appreciate your presence this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next guest this evening, who I was so particularly pleased to invite and welcome, is Cantor Rollin Simmons. Cantor Simmons, welcome. Hello, there you are.
Hello, so good to be here.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here. I'd like to just jump right in and kick off by asking you, can you tell us what you do as a cantor and the role you play in your congregation and anything you wish to share with us?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for asking me to be part of this panel. I'm already just so inspired by Bun B and Tony Pinn. So thank you. So I'm a cantor. A lot of people don't know what a cantor is. I usually tell them I'm a cantor, and then I follow up with, do you know what a cantor is? And often they don't. So a cantor is a member of Jewish clergy, with a focus on the musical life of the congregation. So I'm like the music director for the synagogue, leading the music of worship for all ages, with our music with our preschool kids, our religious school, our Sabbath worship, Shabbat worship, and holidays. I work very closely with my clergy team, the rabbis at the temple. I also officiate life cycle events like weddings and funerals and baby namings. I spend a lot of time helping to run our bar and bat mitzvah program, training students to chant from our Torah and lead prayers. And I also mentor conversion students. And I produce and perform in concerts. And I'm also a pastoral presence. So I'm pretty busy. I do a lot of different things, which is one reason I love my job, because I'm always doing different things.
Yeah, that's so many hats, and it must bring you new things every day. It sounds so enriching. Well, I know you have some great prepared remarks and maybe even some slides for us this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to you and just be tuning in, and I'll catch you in a little bit.
Sounds good.
All right.
I want to talk about the importance of words within Judaism. And I want to start by going back to 2,000 years ago to the temple in Jerusalem, when the form of public worship was animal sacrifice. And I bring you back to this moment because I love the imagery of when they were sacrificing animals, the smoke was rising up, and that was how they viewed connecting to God, that they could see it in this tangible way. And when the temple was destroyed, there was a shift because they had to reimagine what public worship was going to be. And so as it moved to houses of study and houses of worship, there was a shift from the smoke of the barbecue to the words, and just imagining our words rising up as our connector to God. And so over time, our prayer language developed. And so just to begin with, words are from the very start so important. So from our Torah, the 5 books of Moses, we begin with Genesis and the story of creation. And God creates the world with words. God says, "Let there be light," and there was light. And so this power of words to create. And in the Bible, we hear a number of examples of prayer from different characters in the Bible. And these were prayers that were really from the heart. They were spontaneous words that poured out in the moment. They weren't, said with any intention of being repeated again. They were very much this moment of prayer and connecting to God. And over time, as our prayer language developed, this prayer from the heart shifts. These words are passed on orally, our prayers become passed down. And then when the printing press is invented and our prayers start to be printed, they become fixed. And so when you come to worship with us at Emanu, for example, which I invite you, we stream our services, we use a prayer book, and there's this very specific order to our prayers. So it's a big shift from those prayers of the heart to the prayer book we have now. And our prayer book is made up of prayers of words that are coming from the Bible. They're coming from rabbis and scholars over time and poets. And so they're these fixed words, and there's a very specific order. The word for our prayer book is Sidur, which is actually a word that means order. It's connected to the word for Seder, which you may think of Passover, which is coming in just a few days. And the Passover Seder is an order. We follow these 15 specific steps to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And so similarly, our prayer service is this very set framework, this very set structure. And so these words that vary, that are our prayers for different times of the day, for different times of the week, or different times of the year. And I want to share with you these 2 Hebrew terms. One is keva, which is the fixed words of our prayers. And so when these words started to be printed, they were no longer passed orally, and maybe they were someone's prayer from the heart, but now they're printed in the book and they become this very fixed thing. So that's the keva. That's an important part of our prayer. And then the other part is kavanah, sort of this juxtaposition. And kavanah is the intention we bring to the prayer. The heart that we bring. Some of those prayers we read in the Bible, that those spontaneous prayers of the heart, that was that intention. And so the kavanah that we kind of bring together with the fixed prayers, the keva, that is what makes for Jewish prayer. And you have to have both of those things, or you often have both of those things, I should say. And so let's see. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is our prayer language. So our set prayer language is Hebrew. We do pray in Hebrew and in English. You may have heard the words Baruch Atah Adonai. Those are kind of the standard prayer language, which mean blessed are you, our God, O God. And Hebrew is this kind of strange phenomenon within Judaism. It is a treasure, a link to our past, a link to Jews across the world, because of course we say a lot of the same words. And it also can be a barrier. So I am a Reform Jew, and so I speak from a Reform Jewish perspective. And I'll just say that most Reform Jews are not fluent in Hebrew. And actually, to be fluent in Hebrew, the Hebrew that you might hear on the streets of Israel, for example, is not even the same Hebrew that is our prayer Hebrew, which is a bit more of an archaic vocabulary. And so this this kind of presents a strange situation because on one hand, there's this, I think this Hebrew as a barrier allows us to maybe have a more abstract view of God, maybe our own personal interpretation. You know, every translation is an interpretation. So you could look at 5 different prayer books of the same prayer in Hebrew and find 5 different translations. And so this can allow for a more personalized connection to God. But sometimes it can also be a hindrance because you may not know what every word in the prayer means. So as a cantor and a composer myself, I spend a lot of time with these words. They're often set to melodies, which I think helps us to remember them and helps to connect with them in a more heartful way. Sometimes certain melodies become traditional. And this is always a challenging word for me because everyone's traditional is a little different. And sometimes even that traditional melody can become like that keva, that fixed thing. So I'm always trying to find the balance of helping people to feel comfortable in their worship with melodies and words that are familiar, but also to sometimes shed new light on these ancient words to help bring about a renewed sense of intention and that kavanah. So I wanted to share with you a prayer that I have set to music and a little bit about the process I went through to write this setting. So I took the prayer for the evening, which is called Ma'ariv Aravim. And I thought that would be fitting since we're right at that time right now. And this is a prayer that is part of our Shabbat, our Sabbath worship. But it can also be said any evening, like a Tuesday evening, for example. And it comes right after our call to worship and sort of acknowledges where we are in the day. And so I want you to notice wherever you are, maybe look out the window, what the light is doing at this moment. And I'm going to read the translation from our prayer book of this prayer. So this was where I started in my composition. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzivaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. So I took these words and I was just trying to meditate on them. So I did some art and just to see what colors came to mind, what words popped out to me. So this is my watercolor interpretation of this prayer, and you can see some of the words I picked out: arranging the stars in the sky, the day fading away, speak the evening into being. There's that God creating with words again. And so just kind of letting these words kind of sit with me. And then I also was reflecting in my journal and just kind of trying to not be judgmental, trying to just play with the words, see what came out, kind of wait for it to fall into place. And that was hard for me. But this was the first time I really let it sit and let the words kind of find their way. And so I won't read my whole journal entry, but just a little taste of kind of the way my mind was working. And so the next slide are the actual words that I came up with. And the melody was based on a traditional chant that is a part of this prayer, and which I'll just sing a little bit of that first, so you kind of get a sense of where I started. It goes like this: Uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzevot shemo. So I was taking this melody and sort of playing with it, and this is what came out. The light is fading, the night is waiting for you and me. Let's rearrange the stars. The mystery lies in the color of the skies when the words are on your lips that speak the evening into being. Ba 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 ba. The sun's gone missing, the moon is whispering my name, but I have to listen close. The arc of its ascension commands my full attention. The sky provides a backdrop of purples and blues. The light is fading, the night is waiting for you and me. Let's rearrange the stars. Baruch atah Adonai Amari Varavi.
Wow, so beautiful, and just particularly because I'm watching the sun just slowly fade into the horizon right now behind some houses across the way, and it was so appropriate and just so beautiful. I'm just entranced. Thank you so much, Cantor Simmons, and I have some more questions for you, but I'll save those until our panel discussion in a little bit. And just so appreciate your presence here. Your spirit is beautiful, and your voice is too.
Thank you.
Wasn't that just beautiful?
So stunning.
Really. Oh, and the creative process too. That was just a lovely way of sharing with us her creative process, which is so personal, and so I'm just so grateful for that insight.
The art and everything was really, really great.
Just it's an amazing thing. Oftentimes I don't know that people think oftentimes of spiritual work having that kind of creative process. I mean, we're always sort of conditioned to think, or at least I was growing up, that it was just sort of divinely inspired and it just, flowed on the paper. And to see that process, it's artistic as well, and maybe art. Obviously, art is divine. So it was really lovely. So, and speaking of divine, I am thrilled to welcome someone who has made my time here in Houston more rich and lovely and inspired. And so our final guest is Houston's Poet Laureate Emeritus, Deborah DEEP Mouton. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here today. I mean, I've been so inspired so far. This has been great.
It's just really these episodes have been just we knew it was going to be really interesting, but I just am always taken back by how inspired everyone is and just how deep and rich the stories are, and so it's very it's a little overwhelming, to be honest. Deborah, I want to, if we could start by, I'd love to invite you to share one of your original poems with us to start off with. Would you tell us a little bit about it, but then we'll debrief afterwards?
Yeah, so the poem I'm going to share with you was actually part of a commission by the Society for the Performing Arts, and it's called Hold the Light. And it's funny, this phrase, hold the light, just kept resonating in me and kind of pushed out of me this poem. And I later found out that it's like a whole Quaker phrase that means to like hold you closer to God. And I thought it was so interesting that this thing that was like resonating and moving in me this entire time was a calling to be closer to God within the work, and especially within the last year of us kind of struggling through a pandemic. So this is the poem. When the darkness sets in and all the world becomes a quiet stage, when the streets hollow out, no horn or howl of bodies undulating through them, when the abyss of evening seems to have swallowed us whole and this year has twilight zone hazed over all our best made plans, there is still a glimmer, one that whispers all is not lost, that takes us by the hand and says, look, on the horizon, there it is shining still. When all seems devoured by shadow, you and I, we hold the light. That flicker in the void, the one that trades devastation for daybreak, that counts the hospital's hands as sanctuary, that remembers a full classroom without the fear, that counts every disturbance in the gulf and wishes for a pinhole between the storms, the essential gleam that rises early for its shift and stumbles home late, hoping all it brought with it was its own luminescence. We hear the whisper of an invisible enemy's name, have known its hopelessness too, how it wants to dim our light, but this sunburn burst in us is never gone. We hold the power to come back strong, to light a canvas or a street corner or a takeout sign, to show how selflessness shines, how compassion radiates, how resilience still sits illuminating our chest when the darkness seems triumphant. When this year has pulled at all our wires, we get to remind the world that we gleam ever connected. We have enough power to scatter the abyss, to say, if I be my city's keeper behind the mask, let me be a lamp, let there be hope, let there be a brilliant sun waiting on a new year horizon. Let us be the hand pressed to the glass, the heat rising through 6 feet of safety that reminds us that we are not an island, just a lost beam. And oh, how we will return, the way the moon cuts the night and gives us room to dance again. There are still streets to fill, still stages waiting on a world to reawaken if we remember that we hold the light.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when you finish reading one of your own creations, where does that put you? And how, as someone who really utilizes text and words in such a elevated way, where does that put you personally?
You know, I think where for me there's more of that resonance is in the creation of it. I think in my creative process, I feel very much like a vessel. You know, I feel like I often look back at the words that I create and don't recognize them. You know, like I really do feel like there's something moving in me that's bigger than me. And so to recite words, to perform words, there is this almost feeling of like, not in the scary way, but being possessed, right? Like by another spirit that fully takes over my body and that is almost pushing the words out. And I find, you know, chills going on my arms at moments. And I really do feel very, like, you know, a lot less alone. And so I think, you know, talking about like how my understanding of God and my practice of craft work together is the only way it works for me, right? Like is in this very inspired and moved space where I'm beyond myself.
No, and it does, you know, and I was trying to, as I listened to you, and of course I need to mention too that Deborah and I this is not our first meeting, and lucky me, and we met Deborah because Deborah is the librettist for our most recent opera, HGOco's most recent opera called Marion's Song, composed by Damian Sneed, and it tells the story of Marian Anderson, the legendary Black classical artist who, you know, broke barriers in her time. And it's a story that we didn't want to die. We wanted to bring this story to a new generation, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I found that, and so through listening through that whole process of creating that opera, which was a joy, and especially coming out of the first libretto workshop. So in opera, we call text libretto, and libretti in Italian. And so, it was your first real opera libretto. And can you talk just a little bit about, because to me that whole piece is tied to spirituality, and it's this, you know, this woman who is not going to let anyone or anything get her down. And can you just talk a little bit about how you began to craft this piece to tell a story that really brings you to a spiritual place in
I mean,
her
I
life?
think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah,
No.
I think that, you know, there was no way to separate Marian Anderson from her spiritual foundations. It just wasn't, right? From like one of our opening scenes that takes us back to church, right, where she's learning how to sing. There's so much of her craft that's tied into who she is and how she connects with God. And so there really was, you know, when Damien and I sat down to put everything together, this understanding that we wanted to highlight and elevate spirituals and that part of her craft as much as maybe some of the opera pieces that she had become so famous for. We wanted to make sure we didn't lose the cultural ties in spirituality and in her spirituals. And the resonance of her, you know, as a Black woman in a space of opera, being able to pull her culture through these spirituals to this new space. And so you know, as we sat down, that's kind of what was on my mind. It was, how do I tell this story where, you know, you can't stop singing the song by the end of it, as much for the music as it is for the lyrics, right? That there's some refrain that resonates in you that you can't let go of, that you find yourself stumbling into the words again, you know. It's funny how many of the cast members will text me like lines from the libretti, you know, just because they'll be thinking of a word will pop up and it'll come back to them. And I think that's, you know, that's what we wanted. We wanted there to be a moment where, you know, Nevaeh, the character who we created, who kind of is recasting Marian Anderson's life and fighting for her church and coming back to try to save it from being demolished. She has an urgency in her, much like Marian Anderson did, right? Where Marian Anderson's urgency was to have her voice be heard and to have her God be glorified, right? Like all those things. Nevaeh wants those same things. She wants sacred space. She wants the holiness of what it is to own and have your own, and to know that your culture is not going to put that in jeopardy. And so I think, you know, very much in the African American and in the Black American experience, it has been so rooted in spirituality that I don't think that there's ways to talk about our culture without also talking about the ways that we resonate with God.
Well, and I, you know, that is something that's so interesting. And then you take these two main characters in the opera, Nevaeh, the contemporary, right, and Marian, the historical, and you weave their stories together. And you talk a little bit about, because this is an opera that has interwoven, that where spoken word is an integral foundation to this opera.
Yeah. I think that had to be, I mean, for me, that had to be, right? You know, knowing my background and being, you know, a slam, you know, a person who performs in slam and a performance poet and someone who traveled and performs on my own, I didn't want to lose that in coming to this new space of opera. I wanted to show that there was a musicality and a lyricism and a craft that is often overlooked, especially in literary circles, as being less academic and less, you know, polished and refined, but that it has its own tenets and it has its own skill set, and that those things can pair with the classical and in the classical space, right? That we don't have to become something else to have a story be an opera. That opera at its very base was a story told in the streets and acted out by, you know, street performers. And I think when we get back to that heart and that ethos that says that opera is for everyone and every culture and every skin tone, right, every economic status, that we're starting to put opera back in the hands of the people.
Well, and, you know, I was trying to come up with an image, you know, or just a way to express when I hear your work, Deborah, and this grabbed me from that first libretto workshop day, that I've never had words kind of stand up out of the text and kind of follow me around the way your words do. And I have to say, you know, this scene that we want to share is, to me, this is, again, there's so many parts in the opera that I love, but I have to say this is the one that I keep coming back to, and I find something new in it every single time I hear it. And do you want to set up this scene that we're going to share from Marian's song?
Sure. We kind of are going to land in a space where Nevaeh, who will be the poet on stage, whose name is actually Heaven backwards, right? But that Nevaeh is in the middle of her journey to go back to Philadelphia to try to stop the bulldozing of Marian Anderson's home. And she's kind of trying to rallying everyone on the train with her to kind of take on this big feat. Simultaneously, we kind of have it paired with Marian Anderson landing abroad and needing to find her voice in very similar ways to kind of establish herself as an artist in a brand new way. So she's been, only in the States and in a lot of ways kind of touring through the South and, making her way through concerts in the North, but not really being able to put her footprint down because she doesn't know some of the languages that she wants to learn so badly. And so she decides to move abroad and to learn the languages and figure out how to, be a brand new woman abroad that she can't have the permission to be here in America.
And before we go to the clip, I'll share that the role of Nevaeh is performed exquisitely by Tina B, and the role of Marian Anderson is performed beautifully by Zoe Reams. So let's go take a look at this.
Move! The space isn't big enough for you, me, and all my dreams.
Move out of your pond, Marian. Oh, roaring fire is calling. My soul is igniting. My next journey's here.
Union Baptist so close. The hair on my arms. Hallelujah. Purpose, a glow swelling in my chest. Our future a branch away. I just need to.
Excuse me, can you give directions? I know this is the right way.
Feel the passion deeper now.
Not quite ready for campground. So much life pulling me.
My ancestors calling. Sometimes quiet is too gentle. Sometimes a flame must be started. Today, give me the matches. Let me kindling my own body.
Don't hide me under a bushel, this light of mine. My accent isn't perfect, but my voice is running fine. Sometimes the flame must be started. Excuse me, hear me.
I won't let you take this from us.
I know you do. You can't deny this wildfire from the spark that I'm due.
Feel the passion deeper now.
Feel the passion deeper now.
Like my ancestors calling.
My ancestors calling.
Sometimes quiet is too gentle.
Sometimes quiet is too gentle.
Today, give me the matches.
Let me kindling my own body.
I won't let you take this.
I won't let you take this from us. Move out of my way, watch language turn to ash. I am unresting a new tongue, no fear of being Icarus. When you are the noonday sun, sure the tremble moves my heart, of fear and expectation. But nothing lost, nothing gained, time to bet on jubilation. You won't put me out. Move this progression. Move keys, maestro.
That's a clip from the new filmed version that we captured last month. So this is like the sneaky peek of it. So Andy, thanks for making that happen backstage. Yeah, we're all typing in the chat, the private chat here, all of the lines that are jumping out at us. And it's, let me kindling my own body. I remember these are the things that jumped out at me, and it took me over a year to kind of digest all of this and how it comes back. sometimes quiet is too gentle. My favorite too is no fear of being Icarus when you are the noonday sun. And I have to say, that's the one that just gets me every time. It's just, it's so inspired. And there's someone else, Anthony is saying Tony's saying backstage, it's moving, so moving. And it's ironic that this is called Move. This segment was called Move. And that's what the motion in your writing, Deborah, it just, I feel like there's a propulsion in it.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's just, not that matters what I think, but I do. I'm kind of fangirling on you right here. I will say that we will, I want to put a little spot out there that anyone can see. Will be premiering the filmed version of Marianne's song on Marquee TV on Friday, April 30th at 7:30 p.m. and it's free. And so join us. It's easy to get the app, Marquee TV app. And this is one of several main stage free offerings that HGO is offering this year. So virtually. Tell me a little bit about, again, as we're bringing everyone back for the Q&A, I'll start with you, Deborah. If you could talk a little bit about your words alone versus set to music. How does that change? Does it enhance? Because I know we've had some discussions like this in the past about the integrity of the spoken word. And opera, of course, is this wonderful, arm wrestling match between music and words throughout the ages. You could talk a little bit about the merging of those two.
Yeah, it's funny because I think through the things in my life all kind of merge at opera, right? Like I played classical piano for 6 years. I toured with gospel choirs and choirs for, over a decade. And they all kind of were very segmented. While I was writing, they were never kind of merging. And I think when we started coming to opera, I started seeing all the pieces fall together. And I think the rhythms and the melodies in my own head that probably never come out because I don't let them, they are ones that we were able to kind of tap into in the language. And so it almost is like the difference between seeing a piece of art by itself and then seeing it in a suite of artwork, right? Like by itself, yes, it is this thing that works really well and that may be engaging, but when it's paired next to everything that it was meant to be surrounded by, it lives in a way that I don't think it could have lived before. And I think, I definitely, if you had asked me 5 years ago if writing operas was where my life was headed, I would have told you, I would have probably laughed at you. But I really do find a passion and just a real home in feeling and sitting with the words and sitting with music. And so, it fits for me, and I hope that it fits for everyone else who's kind of watching.
I have to say, I'm not... it's not that I can see into the future, but I do not think this is your last opera. I do not think it at all. So
I don't think it is either. So we'll see.
I think so. So Stuart, thoughts here as we have everyone back.
Yeah, I just am so full this evening. My mind is going back to something that Dr. Pinn started us off with this evening, which is this definition of spirituality that he posed, which was the naming of the unnameable, which I thought was so full of potential. And it struck me as I was listening to everyone that everyone was kind of getting at that, naming the unnameable. And it also occurred to me that in different ways, Bun and Cantor Simmons and Deborah, and probably even through scholarship, you too, Dr. Pinn, to name the unnameable, sometimes we have to mix and match. Sometimes we have to lean on the past and our ancestors' words. Sometimes we have to pair words that might not normally go together. Cantor Simmons, when you were talking, I was thinking about all these different translations that you have to sift through and kind of make sense of. But I was thinking of remixing. You use a lot of funk in your music and kind of repurposing funk and soul and even sometimes having samples that are infused through the music. And Deep, I was thinking of ways in which you take words and you repurpose them and sort of delight us that way. So I'm wondering if this way of approaching the unnameable, this kind of mixing and matching, speaks to an evolving human spirit over time, an evolving way of approaching the unnameable. I was wondering if you could kind of reflect on that mixing and matching in whatever order y'all choose. Maybe we could start with you, Dr. Pinn.
That is a fantastic point. I think I would put it this way, that what you get is the use of what you have to create the world you want. And it seems to me that all of these are kind of lodged within the context of a troubled and troubling world. But what these lyrics, what this way of naming and speaking suggests is what is so easy for us to forget, the persistence of possibility. And so what you name in terms of spirit, or what some might call hope, I would see as kind of undergirding this lyrical engagement with the world and naming it as a kind of persistence of possibility.
Thanks, I love that.
I love the idea of connecting with the words of the people that Bun B was talking about, speaking the language of the people in the room and using examples of what people were experiencing to help them connect and kind of name some of the things that maybe people were thinking, and just like giving voice to that, giving permission to kind of speak about those things. And I think about in my own work and the prayers of our tradition, how do we connect to them in our own language, in our own personal experience?
I think the beauty of it is it lets people know that there's no right way or wrong way when it comes to trying to find the answers to these questions, right? It's just about what it feels like, right? Because you don't really know, but it's really about how it feels. And if you can reach some level of comfort with the choices that you choose to make in terms of dealing with these questions and making sense of it all, And so some people may be more receptive to Deborah's illustration or Deborah's perception of it, or maybe more to Cantor Simmons than myself, or maybe more to Dr. Anthony Pinn. But there is no wrong way or right way to deal with it, right? We're all trying to make sense of it. And it's something that we don't really know. It's uncertain to most, if not all. And we're just trying to feel our way through. You can't control what happens. All you can control is your intentions, right? And so it's on good intention that we ask these questions and we, seek this knowledge and try to make sense of it all. And, one way may work and, one way may not. But, again, these are very deep questions that we all have to ask ourselves. And thank God that we have different references that we can kind of pull from that will give us a little bit of illumination on some of these things.
Yeah, I really feel like I think creating is the closest thing to God that you can get to, right? I'm a Christian, so I'll go from that perspective. I think, if you look at Christianity, everyone says like the first thing God did was speak light, but the first thing God did was create, right? And I think when we get to a place where we're at that point that we're creating, we're the ones putting the boxes on it, right? We're the ones saying genre has to be broken here, or this has to be mixed here, but in some ways, creation all was the same thing, right? It may express itself very differently from one person to another, but we're all in the mode and the power of creating. And so I think, I love the fact that I'm listening to how hip hop and how, traditional Jewish songs and how classical music and how spoken word and how they all blend together, because I don't know that I've ever had a conversation where we were all seen as equals in craft, right? And even in theology and in scholarship, all seen on an equal playing field. But the reality is, as we're all creating, we really are equal. And so then it's just an open palette to say, what is it that we want to create and how do we want to create it? And I think when we start to take those limits off of ourselves of what something has to be or has to be called, we start to become even more inventive and even more closer to them.
I love that perspective, Deborah, and I think that it gets at another question that I have, if you'll indulge me, which is when you started your remarks by saying talking about creation, this creative act, and when I think about creation, I think of sort of sometimes in some way translating the immaterial to the material. That for me links also to the body and embodiment and creation and kind of the physical world. And that physicality of being, it appeared in different ways in each of your remarks and your words. And I'm wondering if you could just reflect for a moment on sort of that relationship between the body and the word and maybe the vibration in the word, or the kind of the ephemeral and the physical, and how you navigate that tension in creation.
Well, I know for me as an artist, my rhymes are not just my thoughts, but they're also an instrument in the song, right? My voice is an instrument in the song. And so when I write, I want to write words that are impactful, but I also don't want to disturb the groove, so to speak, right? So I'm trying to find ways in where I can get my message across in the song without getting in the way of the music that's created to help me. A lot of times you can be so intent on getting your message across that you can step on the toes of the musicians sometimes. That could be a great opportunity to blend both, but you're so absorbed with presenting yourself that you're not finding moments of unity and communion in that moment. And so I think that's the beauty of hip hop, is that for me, right, it allows me to not only, give you great frames of reference and give you great messages, but then also, because I have a very deep voice, right, I get to kind of weave in and out of the track. And, so I get, it's a win-win situation for me as an artist. And I think people appreciate it too. That's part of the craft for me.
Sure. It made me think about a lot of Jewish prayer sort of calls us to notice, whether it's the time of day or how our bodies are working in the morning, just even the act of waking up and sort of becoming aware of that, you're not in that sleep anymore, just that first awareness that there's a prayer for that, and just kind of helping us to stop and notice, who we are, where we are, to be grateful for that, to just notice what's around us as well.
Yeah, growing up, my mom used to say that she thought I had 5 lungs, right? Because when I spit, I hold a lot of air, right? And I have a tendency to go on long binges of words, right? And I think that, there is something in the writing that I want as a performer to take my own breath away. You know what I mean? I want to give all of my breath to something. And I think that that's how the words for me live in my body, right? They take everything from me. I'm exhausted when I'm done performing. And, my dad is a pastor, and I remember thinking through, when I was younger, and after he would preach, he would come home and go to sleep. And his body would be exhausted, right? Just off of an hour's worth of talking. And I think it's because he moved beyond just talking, but that there was something else moving out of his body, and he was giving all of his breath. And so I hope to just be able to do the same thing.
That's a beautiful way of describing that.
I'm seeing that connection between spiritus, the root for spirit, and breath, of course. And you brought it so full circle and home. And I'm wondering, maybe as our final comment, Dr. Pinn, you may be a musician. I don't know. I've never heard any of your tracks, but maybe as the kind of the non-musician here, just kind of reflections, maybe some closing thoughts on your observations about hearing these 3 really gifted artists this evening.
Well, I'd like to go back to this issue of embodiment. It seems to me with all 3, you have represented communities that have in real ways been overdetermined by their bodies. Right, that their status and meaning within the context of this world has been confined to a warped depiction of their bodies. And it seems to me what you get with this lyrical creativity is a call to reimagine, to rethink, to re-engage bodies in ways that fully understand their beauty, their capacity, their right to occupy time and space, and to do it in a way that is poetic. And by poetic, I mean it does it in a way that destroys traditional understandings of language to free it to speak a different truth.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. Someone needs to sample that and include it in the next track.
Tony never ceases to amaze me.
I so appreciate everyone. And Carlene, maybe I'll turn it to you to say some final thoughts before we close out the evening. Thank you all from ISH and from myself. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks to all of our guests tonight. We're so grateful, and it always feels the time is so rich and it goes by so quickly. That's what we're hoping. We're hoping that people will be intrigued and made more curious, and to seek out all of your work and to be as inspired by it as we are tonight. So thank you all so much. And so to round us out tonight, Stuart, we've got one episode left.
Yes.
So
yes. You can join us on the 30th, 1 week from tonight, at 6 p.m. for our 5th and final episode, which is Silence. We're really excited, and to drum up support for that, we hope that you'll like and share this video and the playlist and the other episodes that have been part of the series.
Great. And for more information about other programming that both the Spirituality Institute for Spirituality and Health at Texas Medical Center and HGOco at Houston Grand Opera offer, please visit our respective websites at spiritualityandhealth.org and HGOco.org.
Thank you again to the viewers.
Thank you all.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great evening.
See you next week. Bye.